Good morning, and welcome to another Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council webinar. My name is Evan Cameron, and I'm the Manager of Public Affairs and Communications here at the CNIC. Thank you all for joining us today for our 9th and our final webinar of 2025. We're excited to close off the year with a really exciting discussion with some experts from across the country who are using medical isotopes to change lives every day. The four leaders I'm about to introduce to you are the co-chairs of the CNIC's Oncologist and Clinical Scientists Network. This new initiative, which was originally launched back at the Leaders Summit in June, aims to amplify the voices of healthcare professionals across the country to raise awareness for the critical role that Canadian-produced isotopes play in the diagnosis and treatment of cancer. As the group's first initiative, in conjunction with the launch of our newest Isotopes for Hope report last month, a letter from the four co-chairs was sent to every single elected federal and provincial elected official in Canada. This first awareness building effort will help to ensure that policymakers from coast to coast are aware of the critical work that the isotope supply chain in Canada is leading in support of Canadian patients. And the letter also outlines some opportunities for increased government support of the sector. This letter is now available for you all to read on the CNIC's website, which is www.canadianisotopes.ca if you don't already have it, and it's there under the Isotopes for Hope tab. We're now inviting other Canadian healthcare leaders to add their names in support of the letter, so I encourage any healthcare leaders we have on the call to log in and add their names there. Before we jump into this really exciting discussion, I'm really excited to dive in, but I first want to remind all of our attendees here today that there's a Q&A function on Microsoft Teams here. I encourage you all to submit your questions throughout the event, and our panelists will address them during the Q&A time later in the event. It's my pleasure now to introduce the really distinguished panelists that we have joining us today. Dr. Don Wilson is a nuclear medicine physician and radiation oncologist at BC Cancer, where he has served as the medical director of functional imaging since 2005. In this role, Don has overseen the implementation of the province's first PET-CT scanner at the BC Cancer Vancouver site. Under his medical leadership, the Molecular Imaging and Therapy Program has expanded to include 2 state-of-the-art PET-CT scanners, a cyclotron facility, as well as a clinical and research radiopharmaceutical laboratory. Dr. Rebecca Wong is a radiation oncologist at Princess Margaret and professor in the Department of Radiation Oncology at the University of Toronto. She is the chair of the Canadian Radiotheranostics Leader Summit Planning Committee, co-director for the Silber Family Theranostic Center at UHN, and the director of radiotheranostics in the Radiation Medicine Program at Princess Margaret Cancer Center. Dr. Daniel Juneau is head of nuclear medicine at the CHUM at the University of Montreal, medical director of the Cyclotron and Radiochemistry Unit at the CHUM Research Center, and an associate professor in the Department of Radiology, Nuclear Medicine, and Radiation Oncology at the University of Montreal. Dr. Juneau's research interests are focused on radioligand therapy and new theranostic approaches, including phase 1 and 2 studies of new theranostic molecules, as well as developing new clinical approaches to facilitate RLT adoption and integration into clinical workflow. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Andrew Ross is a full professor at Dalhousie University and a staff nuclear medicine physician at the Queen Elizabeth II Health Sciences Centre in Halifax. He also has a Royal College certification in nuclear medicine and diagnostic imaging. Dr. Ross is also the past president of the Canadian Association of Nuclear Medicine, as well as the chair of the scientific committee. Now that you've met our wonderful panelists, first of all, thank you, panelists, for joining us today. We're really excited for a great discussion. Rebecca, I'm going to come to you first for a bit of an overview. So for some in the audience who may not be aware, could you share what is theranostics and how is theranostics used in cancer care, and how has it emerged as this new pillar of oncology, as you say?
Thank you, Evan. It's a great pleasure to be here. So I'll do the honors on behalf of the panel to talk a little bit about what is theranostics. It's probably familiar with many in the audience, but theranostics is a play on the word between therapy and diagnostic. And it is positioned to be the 4th pillar of cancer care alongside surgery, radiotherapy, systemic therapy. Why is it so exciting? Theranostics at the core of it is a designer drug. it is created especially to target molecular targets on abnormal cells, and with the radioisotope attached to it, is able to emit radiation, damage the cells, and hopefully kill them and control the disease, or maybe in the future cure cancer. It is so exciting because it epitomizes what personalized medicine wants to do, to be able to target cancer cells where these overexpressed molecular targets are, but spare the normal tissues and minimize toxicities. The other unique characteristics of theranostics is that by switching the radioisotope from a powerful one that can damage cancer cells and use one that is short-lived and has imaging properties, we can identify and see the tumors wherever they might be hiding with PET scanners, SPECT scanners, molecular imaging tools, and be able to see the distribution of the tumor, the characteristics in the patient, and to target it appropriately with radiopharmaceutical or other modalities. So lots of reasons to be excited.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Dr. Wang, for that really excellent overview. Now that everyone in the audience has the same kind of base level understanding, or maybe further advanced for some of our audience, but definitely everyone has a base level understanding now, thought it would be a nice opportunity for you each to share a little bit of your own stories, how you became involved in theranostics and how this really fast emerging area is advancing in your region. So I'll come to Don from BC first.
Yeah, thanks, Evan, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, so my background, is in nuclear medicine and radiation oncology, and I was involved in the program here in BC from its inception back in 2004, 2005. And it's really amazing to see how the field has evolved, over the span of my career. We started pretty humbly with a clinical trial for FDG PET-CT scanning, and now we have, multiple standard of care PET-CT imaging agents, and it's been amazing to see the evolution of theranostics, and I think it's made a huge difference in how we diagnose and treat patients. And for me, one of the most fulfilling things is to actually interact with the patients, see the patients, and see how well we can diagnose and treat them with this new modality. And it's really changing the landscape. A lot of the work now is in prostate cancer, but I see this evolving into many other solid organ tumor types. And as Rebecca mentioned, I do see this as the next pillar of cancer care. So it's a very exciting time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Don. I'll come to Andrew next for the same question, how you became involved in this field and how things are growing up in Nova Scotia.
Well, I guess I get to probably call myself the oldest one on this committee, so my history's probably on the longest. Don, I lived maybe about a year or two. I came to this through kind of that dual certification you talked about, radiology and nuclear medicine, and the anatomy and the physiology fusing. So when I started, nukes wasn't a whole lot of fusion, but it kind of evolved, and then we got into the PET isotopes, which even evolved further. And then there was this resurgence, as Rebecca talked about using the same sort of molecules to label them with, beta emitters and the like, alpha emitters that can actually treat very effectively. It's kind of ironic because when I started, we certainly, nuclear medicine has been doing theranostics for almost 100 years with iodine-131, where we can image and treat thyroid cancer. But even when I was starting out, there were a couple of monoclonal antibodies labeled with iodine and a couple of other things that were used. And in fact, one of them is still available for lymphoma treatment, and actually has been. So it's not new to our field in nuclear medicine, but in order to really develop, you needed to have, as Dawn talked about, the positron emitters, because they're a much better imaging agent. The whole aspects around accessibility became problems. So for me, at that time when this was all coming to pass, I was the head of nuclear medicine here and saw what was going on, and we went out and we managed to raise a fairly significant chunk of change to be able to build a localized production center, which has been invaluable in terms of patient access on the East Coast. It was built with a vision of being a regional center, and it has been. We've supported all the Atlantic provinces at one time, and now that Newfoundland has a production center, we help them get to the level they're at, and so we now have those things. And locally here in Halifax, we've also evolved, trying to stay as up to date as we can with what's available. We've moved into the lutetium therapies at this point and the gallium-based diagnostic imaging. So very, very exciting. Very important, because if we didn't have this sort of access, it's a real geographic barrier for patients. I mean, we did used to send patients out, but this patient population, a lot of them, that is not an option. And so it's vital that so it's a driving premise of our program here is to try and stay as current as we can in terms of what's available. We don't quite have the same sort of infrastructure that a Dawn does or some of the Toronto or Quebec programs have, but we do try, and I think regional cooperation as well as national cooperation is really vital to bring this stuff forward and keep Canada. We have a bit of a history of being behind a little bit with these things. I think a lot of that comes down to regulatory side of things. We have a small country with a very diffuse population, and you add regulatory hurdles to that, and it becomes problematic. So I see that as something that we really need to try and work to address so that we can move forward with this exciting field.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Andrew. I'll come to Daniel next with the same question. There's lots going on in Quebec. So how did you get involved, and how are things evolving there?
So first, I'm gonna add something to what Andrew said, and I totally agree. Like the idea of theranostics is not new. The idea has been there for a century, basically. But and I think we really need to put the emphasis on that. There's been a lot of improvements in radiochemistry over the last 2-3 decades, and this is what really has opened the door to open the floodgates to all the research that's going on right now, because ideas were there. We just didn't have the technical capabilities to do it. And we as clinicians, we're very lucky that now, and the patients, of course, that we now benefit from these advancements, because there have been significant advancement. That's what has changed, because the idea of doing this has been there for a long time. We just didn't have the technical capability to follow our dreams, right? And now we do, because really at this point in time, when it comes time to designing these molecules, and as Rebecca was saying, they're really designer drugs, right? Now, if you can dream it, you can make it. It's going to take you time. It's going to take you money. You need the resources. But really, if you can come up with the idea today, you most likely can do it. And that's pretty amazing. As to my story, how I get here, I would like to say like I made all the right decisions, everything, but no, I was lucky. I was at the right place at the right time, and I think that's the story of a lot of people, right? So I arrived at CHUM in Montreal just as we were getting a brand new state-of-the-art facility in downtown Montreal, and there was at the same period there was like a significant turnover in the nuclear medicine department, and I became chief at that point, and had this vision that I basically looked at everything we had, everything we were getting, and I said, look, we have all the pieces to turn this into one of or the largest diagnostic center in Canada. We just need to like put in the effort and put it all together, and it's worked really well. I have a great team. It was really being at the right place at the right time in the right environment. I think that's something also that we need to mention. I'm lucky. I'm in Quebec, right? So there's a culture of nuclear medicine that's a lot stronger here than in the remainder of Canada for all kind of historical reasons. But basically, if you look at a map of PET scanners in Canada, there's as many PET scanner in Quebec as the rest of Canada put together, right? And as many nuclear there's not quite, but near like 45 or 48% of nuclear medicine specialists in the whole country are in Quebec. So I was lucky. I had everything I needed at my disposal to turn it into a great program, and things were happening. Things were exploding in terms of possibilities and trials, and so I just seized the opportunity and ran with it.
Excellent. Thank you, Daniel. And Rebecca, I'll come back to you now to share a little bit about your story, how you got involved, and how things are progressing in Toronto.
Okay, so my involvement is the least in terms of duration. I started in the space about 12 years ago, and not because I know much about theranostic at the time. I actually know very little, but Ontario wanted to find a solution for access to radioligand therapy for neuroendocrine patients. And I was the lone radiation oncologist in the expert panel. I think it's almost a giveaway position that, well, maybe put a radiation oncologist there. But because of that panel and the evidence-based approach that Ontario wanted to take, it provided a recommendation to run a trial to generate data, and we followed that. And mostly because of my clinical trials expertise, as well as guidelines development, and perhaps have a bad memory about challenges that just keep at it. I became the PI for the Ontario trial, which successfully completed its accrual 3 years ago. And through that, I learned a whole lot, a ton from everybody around me, all my colleagues, and be able to build the infrastructure within our organization. But perhaps more impactfully is that through the clinical trial, set up the radioligand centers, which is now the centers that are the 5 centers that are delivering radioligand therapy for Ontario since the drugs have been approved for standard of care use. So I guess I also want to take the opportunity to say that this is a space that I have come across that requires the most cross-disciplinary collaboration. I find out about people and jobs that I didn't know existed in my 30 years of being an oncologist. This modality requires that much collaboration and the brain power of these people to make it successful. Fast forward in Ontario, I think the trial that we conducted built the infrastructure. Lutathera was approved, and together with the funding and last year, Pluvicto, there is a significant need to plan for the future. And I'm very proud that Ontario took a proactive approach and have set up a radioligand a working group to plan how to coordinate the centers, to think about a centralized model of delivery, as well as in the future, a distributed model, like a best combination that can serve our patients and ensure equity and access. Also at a Canadian level, led by John, my colleagues in London, to think about the pan-Canadian quality assurance for radioligand therapy. So very forward-thinking, and of course, in our center, we're also planning ahead and anticipating the future capacity that is needed leading up to the fortunate funding approval for our radioligand therapy theranostic center at our institution. So lots of exciting things happening.
Excellent. Thanks so much for sharing that, Rebecca. And we'll come back to that new institution later for sure. Honing in a little bit more on the regional aspect of things, we want to showcase a little bit of the innovation that's happening in each of your respective regions. So we'll go all the way out west to BC first. Don, can you share a little bit about how investments in infrastructure, equipment, and innovation are strengthening leadership in nuclear medicine in BC and also improving patient care and access? And maybe you can also touch on why these investments are so important for the future of cancer care.
Yeah, thanks, Evan. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's really important that we look to the future. And in BC, we've had issues basically since we started the program with, wait times for PET-CT, access to, new cutting edge therapies. And we're working very hard to move forward and improve access across the province. And so there's lots happening. So currently we have 4 PET-CTs at BC Cancer, 2 in Vancouver, 1 in Victoria, 1 in Kelowna, serving a population of about 5.6 million people. So we're struggling with wait times, and we've worked very hard, and we've used our data and analytics people to try and, project what the future needs might look like, sort of short term, medium term, and long term, and plan accordingly. So right now we've got a number of redevelopment projects and new cancer centers coming online. So within the next 6 years, BC Cancer will have 6 more PET-CT scanners, as well as a new PET-CT going in the new St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. So the infrastructure is being developed as we speak, and so in 6 years from now, we should be in a much better place. We're also trying to future-proof our facilities for radioligand therapies. So we've got, we've redeveloped in Kelowna and Victoria to put in a number of therapy rooms and hot labs to accommodate what the anticipated increase in the number of radioligand therapies that need to be delivered, and again to try and provide access across the province. And I'm also very proud of the work we've done with the rollout of Pluvicto therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So we've engaged with all the health authorities in BC. So this treatment is now available basically across the province. So patients don't need to travel to Vancouver to get these therapies. So that's been I think a success story here in BC. In addition to the new PET-CT scanners, we've got 2 new cyclotrons that will be coming online in the next few years. We're very excited about the Institute for Advanced Medical Isotopes. So this is a partnership between UBC, Triumph, provincial, federal governments, and BC Cancer Foundation. So it's a new facility located out at UBC on Triumph land. And within that facility, BC Cancer will have a new cyclotron, which will come online in 2027. And we'll also have hot labs there. And we plan to develop our radioligand therapy research program through there. And through our partnership with Triumph, we'll have access to novel radionuclides for therapy, such as actinium-225. So we'll be able to bring these treatments to patients within BC. And it's just, it's very exciting. We've got redeveloping a complex care unit here at Vancouver Centre, which will include space for radioligand therapy delivery. What else? Yeah, so I think things are definitely moving in the right direction here in BC. We have a strong clinical trials unit as well. So we're involved in a number of phase 1 through to phase 3 clinical trials, which is for me very exciting as well. It allows us to be able to, bring these exciting new therapies to patients in BC before they become, approved by Health Canada. So that's an exciting part of the work that we do. One of the things that does worry me is really the human resource aspect. Certainly here in BC, and I think across most of Canada, there's a shortage of technologists who are involved not only in the diagnostic PET-CT component, but also in delivery of the radionuclide therapies. So I'd like to see more investment in training programs for technologists, and also I worry about the number of nuclear medicine physicians that we have across the country. Here in BC, we train 1 or 2 nuclear medicine physicians per year. So those numbers, I'd like to see them a lot higher as well to support the work that I see coming. But yeah, anyway, it's an exciting time. I mean, there's challenges, but I think it's really important that we collaborate with others. Like, it's not just one person is going to do all this. You have to collaborate with the government, very important, and as well as colleagues both locally, nationally, and internationally to make these steps forward. So I think the collaboration is really a big part of getting things done and bringing these new imaging and therapeutic agents to patients in a broad, equitable, and timely fashion.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Don. That was a very, very comprehensive overview. We'll continue moving eastward now. So we've landed in Toronto. So Rebecca, could you speak to the recent announcement of the new Sober Theranostic Centre at UHN and shed some light on what this means for patients and access to care and the continued growth of theranostics in Canada?
Thank you. Yeah, we're very excited about the Sober Family Theranostic Center at UHN. Just to mention that across the province, all the other centers are raising their capacity to deliver, to meet the patient needs. London, Sunnybrook, Juravinski, Ottawa, and we want to plan ahead as well. And in addition to providing the clinical capacity, we also want to build the innovation and engage all the scientists and oncologists that is within our walls and beyond in the collaborative approach and contribute to the space. In terms of capacity, we did some projection and using the population-based statistics and the number of patients that are diagnosed with neuroendocrine and prostate cancer, and using published data, we anticipate that Ontario will need to deliver about 6,500 cycles a year, even just with current indications. And the capacity that we currently have within our walls, which serve us reasonably well now, is about delivering about 400 cycles a year. And we anticipate, and that include iodine and radium. So we anticipate a rapid growth and need, and therefore the Theranostic Center proposal. The currently approved plan will give us the capacity to deliver about 3,000 cycles a year. And the space that we have been allotted to us is about just over 8,000 square foot. It brings together the infrastructure that is currently distributed across either side of University Avenue, and patients have to be wheeled and walked to get their scans, to get their treatment, get their follow-up, etc. By bringing all of this together, hopefully it will give a much better patient experience. It but more important, perhaps equally important, is to bring the team together so that they bump into each other more often and generate ideas and move forward. So I think the access to care and improving the collaboration is really important. And I just want to also mention about the clinical trial capacity. Having this theranostic center will allow us to grow our ability to open more trials in more diseases so that more patients can benefit from it, both right now in trials as well as in the future with positive results emerging. And the other area that we want to facilitate is investigator-initiated ideas. Pharma ideas are big picture, very important for individual drugs to be moved forward. But I think the frontline physicians would have the best ability to identify opportunities in different treatment algorithms as to where theranostics best fit and how to combine it with other modalities. And I guess finally, one of the things that we very keen to develop is to bring the expertise of using radiation in radiation medicine and synergize it with the long-standing history of nuclear medicine and contribute to the space to improve outcomes. So lots of things that we're doing right now, as well as going forward in the future, that we wish to be able to bring to our patients.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rebecca. On the topic of training and talent, Daniel, looking at Quebec now, could you elaborate on how CHUM's training programs are helping shape the future of theranostics in Canada and the kind of next generation of talent that's needed for Canada's isotope leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very lucky, as I said earlier, we have brand new facilities, and in terms of capacity to deliver doses, we're pretty good with both at the local and provincial level. In the short and medium term, we're in a good position. Long term, it's going to depend on a lot of moving pieces, right? New drugs that are coming down the pipeline, new indication for existing ones. So who knows, right? It's hard to predict where we're going to be in 10, 15 years. I'm convinced we're going to be doing a lot more than what we're doing right now, but how much more? Now that's a different question. And yeah, so I totally agree. I think there's really three pillars of building a strong theranostics program and a strong theranostics community, right? One is, of course, clinical delivery. The second one is research, and the third one is training. Training is crucial, right? Because if you have you can't have people working, in their little corner and doing their little thing without disseminating the knowledge if you really want to bring these new technologies to patient, right? And as the other panelists said, you need a multidisciplinary approach to make this work, right? It's complex. There's lots of stuff going on, and you want to fit all the pieces together at the right place, at the right time, with the right patient, and that takes a multidisciplinary approach. And so we've really focused a lot of work on the training program. Yeah, University of Montreal is one of the largest nuclear medicine residency program, and so for the last few years we've really been expanding the amount of exposition that the residents are getting to theranostics and radioligand therapy at large. We make sure that basically, like, they're going to be the next generation taking care of patients, and we basically, our objective is when they graduate from the program, we want them to be able to have an independent practice and do theranostics and RLT. And I think we're being pretty successful right now because we're starting to see the results of these efforts, right? the latest graduate that we have are moving to new centers and expanding the RLT programs in their new centers, and that's crucial, right? And we're doing the same thing with technologists, meaning that we're also a large center for training of imaging technologists within the province. And again, we make it a point to be sure that every single trainee that comes through our doors is exposed to theranostics, and not just their little piece of it, but that they see the whole continuum, right? That they really understand who is involved from A to Z, and how all these pieces fit together. We've also just launched a new Theranostics Fellowship at CHUM. We have our first fellow that started a few this year. And so that's another piece. And we've also put together some training, which I think is pretty good for in practice. We've put together a preceptorship. Basically, it's a 2 or 3 day program. Physicians from across Canada have come in here, and they get to it's a mix of basically classroom and hands-on training with real patient, and it's really like a boot camp for theranostics that we've organized for PSMA and PRT, and it's been, I think, pretty successful over the last few years. Attendees have been very happy with that, and so I really think that this dissemination of knowledge is crucial, right? Because we need right now, if you look at Canada, I think we're in a good position when it comes to theranostics and RLT, and it's mostly being driven by large university center, which is what you would expect for something new, and that's okay. But if we want this technology to move to maturity, right? We need to start to disseminate this expertise in other centers, and I can't stress enough how important that's going to be for the future of this technology.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Continuing further east, we've arrived in Halifax. So Andrew, could you share a little bit about how the Atlantic regions are working together to improve access and availability for patients and strengthening collaboration, which has really been one of the major themes that have emerged from this discussion. So yeah, over to you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do 2 things here. Just by virtue, you heard I'm heavily involved in the Canadian Association of Nuclear Medicine, which is the national doctors association. If Daniel hadn't mentioned, I was going to say thank you. I can tell you, speaking from them both local and national, that the program that CHUM does for practicing physicians is fantastic and is a great, and not to get too political, but is a wonderful Canadian resource. And so thank you for you and your colleagues. I know it takes a lot of work, and it's very well received. I also want to, while I'm on the national bent, also kind of, because health human resources that we talked about, this is something we certainly struggle with locally as well as everybody else. And it's not just, nukes physicians, technologists, but we also have the allied scientists, the radiochemists, the radiopharmacists, the technology people who work within those production facilities. They are a scarce commodity, and we've been very fortunate in Halifax. We run on a relative skeleton staff, I've got to say, and I just have always, when I was leading, always in jeopardy that one of our lead people will either not come into work for a week or whatever, and so that is something that needs to be addressed. And so training programs that Danielle's talked about, but also, and I think probably CNIC and CNIC's industry is a good training ground for some of these ancillary scientists, which we on the clinical side absolutely can't do without. They're a vital piece of the team. I've been very fortunate to work with, there's a fellow by the name of Gaston Mazerois, who's he leads the cyclotron at the Montreal Neuro, and he was our first scientist here, and they're just a very, very important part of this puzzle. So that's the second thing. And the third thing nationally I want to just kind of harp on, because it is, everybody talks about clinical clinical trials and the importance of that. It is vital in this. As Dawn's mentioned, most of us who deliver clinical-based FDG now all had to start under a CTA model. The amount of work that went into that across the country because of the fact that we all had separate trials, it was a tremendous amount of duplication, and unnecessarily so. And so as we move into this, I'm making the pitch from the Canadian side that, you know, CANM pushing, and hopefully industry and CNIC, that we need to have a national clinical trials network. I think there's a great opportunity here with what's going on south of the border for Canada to step into the North American vacuum that's been created. I'm old enough that, you know, helping, and but you know, it's going to be the younger ones like you, Daniel, who are going to be the ones who help push that that vacuum. I think we really have an opportunity. So that's my national hat. Now I'll come to Halifax. Regionally, we certainly have cooperated. We provide theranostics here for the Maritime region, and we had been doing it for the Atlantic, but Newfoundland is getting themselves established now so that they're actually doing their lutetium-based therapies themselves now, which is good because it's a tremendous burden for patients to have to come outside of that. In Halifax, we've made a fairly significant, relative to our size, commitment to this. We actually have a dedicated theranostics coordinator, which is an incredibly important position in order to bring all, because it's a very, very complex administrative task. And if that's falling on the docs or the nuclear medicine techs, we just don't have the resources to do that. And we're hopeful somewhere along the way to actually get a theranostic nurse, which again will just enhance the local program tremendously, and allow, until New Brunswick and PEI hopefully get to their stage of being able to do this, that we will be able to provide the Maritimes, which is at least a road-based network, as opposed to having to fly as you do from St. John's with the vagaries of flights and fog and things. We've also just opened our new diagnostic theranostic room where patients come. So it's within nuclear medicine, which is excellent, has all the stuff needed for that. So those are the kinds of collaborations we're doing. We work closely with our folks in Cape Breton. They're actually going to be getting a PET scanner. We'll have 2 PET scanners for the little over 1 million people when that comes on. It's still a couple years away because there's construction and stuff, but that will be a very, very important thing as this expands. So that's kind of what's going on here.
Thank you so much, Andrew. When we're having such a great... Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Evan, if I may add something on that, because Andrew touched something which I think is really important to point out. Because I know that we have in attendance quite a few people from industry and government, and I think one of the things that's really critical to understand, one of the things that differentiate theranostics from many of the other treatment options that we have, and so it's logistics. Okay, so logistics are crucial when it comes to radioligand, either therapeutical or diagnostic. And a lot of people in healthcare don't necessarily understand that. It doesn't come to them, like they're not used to having this whole logistics issue, but it is an issue. And I think that's one part where industry can play a large role, because the whole logistical aspect needs to be top notch, because otherwise stuff falls through the crack, and that's that. And we need to make the healthcare authorities understand this whole aspect, how it plays this critical role in delivering these drugs, which they're not used to, because, you know, like most chemotherapy, like if to take an example, when it comes to chemotherapy, these agents, they're shelf stable for weeks, months, some of them years. None of the stuff that we use is stable for that long. A lot of the stuff we're using is good for 48, like therapeutic stuff is good for, like, look at Pluvicto or Lutathera, they're good for like 72 hours on average once they're out of the door, wherever they're being produced, right? So by the time you get them, and some of them are not being produced in Canada, right? So if for example, most of the PSMA lutetium that's being clinically given right now in Canada is coming from New Jersey, right? So it's being made in New Jersey, it's out of the door, you have 72 hours, it needs to cross the border, get to your hospital, you need to do the reception, you need to have your patient. By the time you get it and you're ready to use it, on average, you may have 24 or 28 hours to use it. that is not a lot of time. If anything goes wrong, right? Somebody messed up giving the appointment, there was a mistake on the paperwork, boom, that's tens of thousands of dollars down the drain. And so there's this whole, and that's something that I've had so many discussion with the hospital and the provincial people about, look, logistics is crucial. We need to get this down real good if we want it to work. And that's really one area where we can make a difference.
Thanks so much for chiming in there, Daniel. It's like you predicted my next question. We are running short on time here, as we always do when we have these great discussions on these webinars. But we've heard from Daniel on what he would share with government. I'm curious for the other three panelists, if you could very, very briefly share. We do have some government representatives on the call today, so if you could share one piece of advice or one thing you would like them to know about your work, what would that be? So I'll maybe start with Don, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things, in my view, is just future planning. And you don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden, there's a new indication or set of indications, and you don't have the infrastructure to be able to deliver, the care that patients need. So I think future planning, working with, local clinicians, leaders to develop a short, medium, and long-term plan for the future, I think is really important. And that encompasses not just the technologic infrastructure, but the human resource element. To me, that's sort of the key.
Excellent. Thank you, Don. We'll go to Rebecca next.
I also have so many things that I could say, but I thought that it's important for them to recognize the complexity, as Daniel has said, but speak to the successes that is accomplished. A lot of successes are quietly implemented and nobody knows how much work went behind it. And by the public knowing about it, the government knowing about it, and the successes being celebrated, the hospital pay attention, the policymakers pay attention, and remove barriers to allow things to move forward. I think there's so much work that needs to be done if we can remove barriers and allow the ideas to move forward, and I think we can do it. So that will be my message.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Andrew.
I think mine would be just following up on Daniel's logistics and just the special nature of what we're dealing with here from a regulatory point of view. These are not your standard large pharma drugs, and they need to be addressed especially within the regulatory area. And to my mind, that means working directly with the nuclear-based community, nuclear medicine-based community, to understand mutually the regulatory, but also the special nature of what we have. And we had that, but it's become a little less strong than it should be, in my point of view, at this point. So hopefully we can reestablish.
Thank you so much, Andrew. We've received a lot of engagement from the audience, so I really appreciate everyone sending in your questions. We'll try to get to as many as we can. The first one that's come to my attention here touches on a point we've discussed quite a bit today, which is staffing and talent. From Eric, staffing models seem to vary widely across provinces and even among institutions. Would any or all panelists care to comment on how to ensure appropriate staffing is available to deliver treatments to patients, including the hurdles of properly trained workers and hospital administration's oversight of budgets? Any of the panelists can feel free to jump in on that one.
Well, I'm happy to start. First, I'm going to say I think we're playing catch up right now, and that's I don't think it's anybody's fault. As I said earlier, there's been a lot of development that has allowed us to really, like, if you look at the number of theranostics trial, just for example, okay? So over the last 7 years, it has the number of active RLT trial has multiplied by a factor 10, okay? So that's a lot of expansion in a very short amount of time, right? And I don't think anybody could really predict how much expansion there would be a few years back, even just 15, 20 years back. So now we're playing catch up. The good news, though, is I see the excitement that people have for it, and that's going to help us, right? Because it's interesting. So if it's interesting, people are going to come to it now. So I don't think we need we don't need to convince them to do it. We just need to give them the appropriate training programs because people are interested, right? But it's going to take time. It's definitely, I foresee that this is going to, human resources is going to be an issue in the short term, absolutely, and that's going to be Canada-wide for sure. Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Not to harp on government, but I mean, this is a lot of this is government. The governments, provincial and federal, need to come to the table to recognize where we are. As CNM has a white paper joint health human resource that we're working with ourselves, the CAR, the Canadian Association of Radiologists, and the CAMRT to try and help bring the visibility up within government. Despite the fact of how much visibility we have, we are still a small player in the healthcare field, and but government is the one that's really going to help in terms of expanding the programs that are already in place to try and get some people through the door.
Thanks, Andrew. Any of our other panelists want to comment on that, or shall we move on?
Maybe I'll comment. I think that doing some evidence-based, data-driven imagination of what the goal is important. It is certainly, it may be wrong, but I think that the table that I created with my colleagues projecting into 5 years gets shown in many meetings. Then people poke holes on it, but I think it's very valuable to plan ahead. I also want to say that having cross-disciplinary coverage and welcoming other disciplines being involved, I think is valuable. For example, technologists and nurses having specialized knowledge in the space and therapy, radiation therapy, technology, therapists that have special knowledge in this, to be able to create some redundancy and work together, I think could provide more capacity. I think ensuring that's specialization. I think a career path will attract and keep people in this area is exciting, and I think young people will want to enter if there is a career path. And ensuring pay equity. I think it may not be a huge amount of money compared with how much expensive these things are, but ensuring that people with the expertise is appropriately retained in their jobs.
Don, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything that's been said. My colleagues have nailed down some of the most important issues. I think it's also important, to, there's so many good news stories, about theranostics, about nuclear medicine. And I think it's important to engage, young people, like students, even before they graduate from high school, that this is a new exciting field, has a huge impact on patient care, and get them interested, or try to enhance our profile to get people interested in the field at a young age and want to pursue a career along these lines. I think would be an important piece.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I see another question in here from Andrew. From your perspective, in the coming decades, what do you hope or expect the role of medical physicists to be in theranostics, radiopharmaceutical therapy, and radioligand therapies? Again, open to any of the panel.
I could start. I work with a lot of medical physicists. We have 30 radoncs here and I think 22, 25 medical physicists. Very talented people, and I certainly could not have done any of the dosimetry work without a lot of their support. I think I'm sure there are many other applications from accrediting, validating the cameras to do the imaging, etc. But I just want to focus on the dosimetry part of it. It's well described in the nuclear medicine literature how to use the SPECT imaging and PET imaging as well to generate the data, that quantitative data to understand the radiation dose absorbed. And the naysayers would say that give me the evidence in the randomized trial and then I'll do it. But as a radiation oncologist, that my whole career is built on giving the right dose to the right tumor. I do believe that it would have value if we have that information systematically across the jurisdiction, across the specialty, and the role of medical physicists to standardize, to make it the same language, just like in external beam radiotherapy, I think will go a very long way. And I think that is a role that I think medical physicists that I work with are keen to be working in that space to make it happen. So I think engaging them in this direction is important. The other piece of it is generating the data on toxicity. So again, generating a dose information, correlating, and if we know that they are consistent across institution, the future of applying AI and generating big data that can generate normal tissue tolerances that's more contemporary would do the field a lot of good. So though I think that's just one slither of what medical physicists can do for us. I'm sure there are many others.
I see Andrew's hand up, and we only have time, unfortunately, to hear from one more panelist. So I will give the last comment to Andrew.
Well, I was just going to echo the dosimetry stuff is exceedingly important, as Rebecca says. I guess the jury is still out, as you say, in terms of the clinical role, but really as we bring new isotopes in, and the whole field of actually, because some of these therapies are multi-dose, actually watching dosimetry evolution and outcome and those sorts of things, vital. I will also say that, a medical physicist is vital in a nuclear medicine as well as a radiation oncology field in terms of the CNSC reviews that go on. It's vital to have that expertise within the program in order to be, and training for staff, both physicians as well as technologists, an incredibly important aspect. And as you also alluded, the QC on both the therapy and the diagnostic side are all very important. So they're a very important piece that, it's a village that does this. It's not a single.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Well, this has been a really, really excellent discussion. I feel like I personally have learned a lot, so I hope our audience feels the same way. First of all, I would like to thank our presenters for joining us and for all the work that they contribute to that the CNIC leads. Would also like to thank all our attendees for joining us today. Personally, I'd also like to thank my colleagues at the CNIC for helping make these 9 webinars that we've done this year possible. Thanks to all of you who have joined the webinars throughout the year, and we look forward to being back in 2026 with some more engaging webinars. A few things to address before we sign off today. You all may have heard that the CNIC recently launched our newest report, Isotopes for Hope, Canada's 2030 Promise. There are some little tidbits from the speakers you heard from today within the report, so I encourage you all to check it out. It is really, I think it's my favorite report that the CNIC has done recently, so I hope you all enjoy it as well. As I mentioned earlier, when I was delivering the introduction today, we also recently launched our Oncologist and Clinician Scientist Network. You can scan that QR code there for any of the healthcare leaders on the call today. You can scan that QR code and add your name to the letter that was sent out to all of the elected officials across Canada. So we're really trying to build up some support and raise awareness for the work that the folks on this call and folks across the country are leading in this critical sector. And last, but certainly not least, as some of you may already be aware, the Canadian Radiotheranostics Leader Summit will be once again returning to Toronto in 2026 on May 25th and 26th. We're expecting maybe nearly 500 people to join us this year. It was a big one last year, but we're hoping to make it even bigger and even better next year. So we're glad to continue to partner with our friends at University Health Network, London Health Sciences Centre, BC Cancer, and CAMH to put on this really amazing opportunity for the entire industry to come together and learn and network. So we hope you will join us there. Registration is not yet open, but you can keep an eye on things in the new year, and we will be sure to keep you updated on CNIC channels when that registration is open. Thank you all once again for joining us today, for the support throughout the year, and we look forward to seeing you all in the new year with new initiatives that the CNIC will be leading. So thank you all so much.